Welcome to the Game Night High School Football Podcast, a weekly review of all the local high school football games set to be played this weekend. The Game Night Podcast is brought to you by Sun Orthopedics of Evangelical. Hit refresh and get back out on the field. Now, we turn it over to our hosts, sports editor Kurt Ritzman and lead sports writer Todd Hummel.
Hello and welcome to Week 7 of our Game Night Football Podcast. I'm Kurt, this is Todd.
I think we ought to do our openings where we do, 10 seconds before we start. I think they would be more entertaining.
Probably, but I'm not sure they fit our aesthetic for the podcast.
We have an aesthetic?
I don't
Other than two beards and long hair?
And awesome analysis.
Sure.
We've got some big divisional games this week that I'm really looking forward to seeing how they play out.
Both Selinsgrove and Shamokin. Selinsgrove and Shamokin play each other in Division 1, and then Montoursville and Danville in Division 2 this week. Division 1's obviously wide open. With Shamokin losing to Jersey Shore last week, everybody now has 4 teams now have one loss. Shikellamy, Jersey Shore, Lewisburg, and Shamokin.
Selinsgrove.
And Selinsgrove. I knew there was a 4th team there. I do math.
Schick has 2 losses.
Schick has 2 losses.
And 1 win, so they're just a game behind.
There you go. But, I think the winner of this game is obviously the favorite for to at least split the division. I think most people think Lewisburg's gonna win out now, and with Shikellamy left on the schedule. Plus they still have Jersey Shore. So, I think it's going to be Lewisburg and Lewisburg and Selinsgrove, Jersey Shore and Selinsgrove, Jersey Shore and
Shamokin.
Yeah. So it's pretty wide open right now between those 4 teams. I can't get a read on Shamokin. I'm really surprised. I think I said it last week. If they change the culture up there, they go up to Jersey Shore and they should win. And things did not go well to start that game up there. And, when you look at the yardage, it was fairly close, but it was turnovers. Shamokin fumbled the ball away 3 times, ended up falling behind by 3 touchdowns, I think, fairly quickly. Tanner Lorson threw 3 touchdowns for Jersey Shore. And now, now on the road again, where they head over to Harold Bowling Field, where, Selinsgrove's defense scored 2 touchdowns last week against Loyal Sock after it was... I believe it was tied at 7-7, and Selinsgrove was able to pull away, and it is the first time, they were really able to get the running game going, too. Joey Kahn up over 100 yards, had 2 touchdowns on the ground. So this game this week between Shamokin and Selinsgrove should be quite interesting. I'm trying to think. I think it's been at least 10 years, 10 or 12 years since Shamokin beat Selinsgrove. I think they beat them twice the year that... Shamokin won the district title, taxing my brain, 04 or 05, I think, under Carm DiFrancesco. So, the Indians will be looking at that one. And, you hate to say it, but it seems like, Shamokin's playing to its competition. They were really ready for that Lewisburg game and were able to beat the Green Dragons. So, I kind of expect them to be fired up going over to Selinsgrove. One of the places where they've struggled, at least early in the season for the Indians, was stopping the run. And Selinsgrove looks like they want to establish that running game. The way this looks, it's going to come down to turnovers. Shamokin turned over Lewisburg quickly twice and was able to win, and then the same thing happened to them the next week. Going to go with the Seals in this one, but should be one of the better games of the week.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Yeah, you're talking about Shamokin, and 2 weeks ago they got those 2 early defensive touchdowns, kind of cruised. Last week, turnovers hurt them, and kind of laid an egg at Jersey Shore.
And, and another big thing for the Indians is in the power rankings. They're currently still on pace for a home game, the 4 seed, and a win over a 4A Selinsgrove team will certainly help that, keep pace, because the top 3 there between Montoursville, Danville, and Lewisburg, obviously one of the top 3 are going to lose this week since Montoursville and Danville play. And so, that's an interesting race to keep your eye on. And, moving on, Montoursville and Danville in Division 2. Danville's lone loss came in the division earlier to 42-41 or 41-40 to Loyal Sock up at Loyal Sock on back when Connor Watkins was still playing. Montoursville has a win over Loyal Sock, currently undefeated in Division 2. I think you got to think the Warriors are one of the big surprises overall in the district after 3-7 last year. been really impressed. The Williamsport paper does a passer rating thing for the entire District 4, and Hunter Shearer is the top-ranked passer by I think it's the NCAA college rating in District 4 right now, and that's pretty impressive for a guy. When I saw them play last year, he really struggled. So he's really improved. And if you saw them in basketball when they won the district title last year and saw him this year, I think it's pretty clear that as a junior he's kind of grown into his body. It's very clear there's a lot less, for lack of a better term, baby fat there.
Sure.
And he's really improved with Jackson Delina, who, if you follow baseball, is a great catcher for the Warriors. They've really developed that passing game, and they don't have one big. Doesn't seem like they've settled on a running back. They like to get the ball to Logan Ott and a couple other guys. So they're kind of like this Danville team who, if you look at the rushing game, isn't one guy that's really dominating the carries, but there's a lot of big plays there and halfbacks. And I talked to one of those guys after their big win over Central, where they fell behind early, and kind of what the mood will. Peyton Persing tells us kind of what the mood was like in the locker room at halftime.
We weren't really worried at all. We knew we were a second half team. We were going to come out and do our thing, and we did it.
Changed much up pass defense wise between the first half and the second half?
Not really, no. We didn't, more adjustments like in the box offensively and stuff like that, putting in some new things.
I was going to say a lot of Wildcat today out of you. I was going to say, did you like that?
Yeah, that was fun getting the ball and running it.
It seemed kind of like, especially in that long pass, moving you around a little bit, kind of get you guys with the matchups that you want. Is that kind of what you were looking for there on that pass?
Yeah, that's the whole idea, is having them to look for who we got where and everything, and just generate that confusion where they can't really think and do one set thing.
How big was this win for you guys? Just kind of the outside nonsense going around the program this week, and the other things going in last year at this game too.
Yeah, no, that's a huge one for us. We wanted to play these guys, and we knew we had a shot, so we came out firing on all cylinders, excited and ready to go. And
now, his younger brother Ian had a big interception late in that game, right, to kind of seal the win?
Well, actually, it wasn't late. It was early in the third quarter. Danville was down 21-14 at the half, and actually Central started to put a drive together to start the second half, and Ian Persing jumped in front of a pass at about the 15 and returned it 85 yards for a touchdown to tie the game, and actually Central didn't score again. And Ian talked a little bit about what the move was like for the Ironmen too in the locker room at halftime.
every once in a while we would drop another safety back when they went that spread. And that really seemed to help to cover the seams where they were killing us in the first half.
Was there much talk at halftime? What was the talk at halftime being down like that?
Just pound them. Yeah. Just pound them. Keep going, keep fighting.
I mean, you guys, being down 7 still felt pretty comfortable there?
Yeah, we felt fine.
Yeah.
We were confident in ourselves. We kept pushing.
Last year this game was pretty close. It was 7-0. Danville won the game. Montoursville's defense did a real good job.
It was 7-0.
Yeah, that was the final. Now, in Danville's defense, it was in between the South Williamsport and the Central Columbia game last year, which are two big games. So it was kind of a trap game when Montoursville was struggling. But this Danville team made me shake my head, a couple times last week, both in good ways and in bad ways. Gave up a first and 37 and an 87-yard or 88-yard touchdown on a first and 37, and missed a couple tackles on another long pass. But you also saw their big playability in the second half, and I really think that's, they're making mistakes, but they're good enough to overcome their mistakes. And I really think at home against a team that maybe is a surprise, as I think that this is a game that Danville probably wins, and I think it looks a lot like last week where it's close for a while, and just Danville's big playability allows them to pull away at the end.
Do you think there's any problems for Danville play? Last week was the game of the week, was Central Columbia. This week probably the game of the week again. So two really what we think are tough opponents in a row. Does that have any cumulative effect?
Well, it's going to have a cumulative effect on Danville. It's going to be interesting. Last week Central, this week Montoursville. I think it's next week is Shamokin. The week after is Selinsgrove, and they finish up with Southern Columbia. So we're going to find out how good this Danville team is, because that schedule's pretty tough, and they've. Luckily for them, if they've struggled these last 2 years, it's come with injuries at this late part of the season, and they are a little banged up in the backfield. But talking to Coach Kaiser at the beginning of the season, that's probably where most of their depth is the backfield and the skill positions. So if they were going to get dinged up, that's probably the best place to do it. And, as long as they stay healthy, I think they got a real shot at the top seed and have to be considered right now. That Class 3A race in District 4 is wide open. I think any of the top 5 could win, which is Montoursville, Danville, Lewisburg, Shamokin, Central. Shamokin's been so inconsistent that they can be good. And if, Loyal Sock's sitting right now at 2 and 4 in the 7th seed, and if Connor Watkins gets back, that puts them right in the mix. I don't think anybody wants to, host a Loyal Sock team with Connor Watkins coming back in Week 11 in the first round of districts.
What are the chances Danville gets the 2 seed and we see that rematch in the first round of districts?
I don't think either coach wants that if both are completely healthy.
As a fan, I'd like that.
Yeah, and that's a rematch of the district title game last year, and a fun 41-40 game. I don't know if we have enough math skills for them to play again.
Let's take a look at the other Hack 1 game this week. Shikellamy has struggled coming off their first win of the season, but no one has pulled away in that division like we talked about. And if they upset Lewisburg, they're 1 game out and tied for second with 2-3 other teams.
Yeah, and looking at this, I think we're kind of snowed, concerned about the Shamokin loss, but I think Lewisburg is clearly the better football team here, and I think they should win this one fairly easily. Max Moyers is the first guy up over 1,000 yards this season, rushing the ball, and they've really done a good job of overcoming that injury in the second or third week of the season to Dylan Farinato, and they've really found something that works like they did at the end of last year when they lost Dylan. So, great win by the Braves, fell behind 3-0, really struggled on offense again until the second half and found some stuff they could do with Jermez Herring. Now, the hits keep coming for the Braves. Sophomore quarterback Duncan Weir's not going to play this week.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't want to get in trouble.
Drew Balestrini did a good job in relief from
Thank you.
talking to Scott, who covered that game for us last week.
I was going to go with Kate again. I've been doing horrible with that this year, but Drew Balestrini is going to get the start, and he actually, I guess he technically started the Selinsgrove game earlier this season because he came out the first drive of the series, but Duncan Weir then went most of the way. This Lewisburg defense has been playing, really well. I thought that Bloomsburg game would be closer last week. Bloomsburg had been playing well till, only scored 7 points on the Lewisburg defense last week. Thinking Lewisburg should win this one and keep themselves, at the top of Division 1.
One of the other Hack 1 contenders faces a crossover challenge this week. Challenge is a polite term, as they're headed to play. Jersey Shore is headed to play Southern.
And, Jersey Shore, since that loss to Selinsgrove the second week of the season, has played really well, got themselves back to 3-3. They've beaten some good teams. Their wins are over some. They have 2 good wins now with beating Shamokin and Montoursville this season. So the Jersey Shore is playing well. I think the weird thing so far is Kyle Toom doesn't have a 100-yard game. Still.
Wow.
And, they've really struggled to get a running game going that they've really relied on to set up their passing game over the last, 4 or 5 years. Tanner Larson threw 3 touchdown passes last week in the win over Shamokin. Southern, Preston Zachman's really stepped in. I think he was 8 of 10 last week for 158 yards and a couple touchdown passes. Gavin Garcia seems to have gotten comfortable as a freshman halfback. He's really, I think he has 11 touchdowns now this season already as a freshman. And, the other Garcia kid's pretty good too. He's leading the area in touchdowns now with 17 after, I think it was 5 last week. Yeah. 4 on the ground and 1 in the air, I think it was. So, I think the scariest part of that game last week was late in the story. They've, without Hollenbach, they've kind of started sprinkling Julian in at quarterback to kind of give teams another look. So
I don't think he threw a pass, but he had a nice first down run on like a 3rd and 7.
Well, was that you that did the athlete of the year when he was a freshman?
Yeah.
Supposedly his best sport's actually baseball, but he finds it boring.
That's what he said.
It wouldn't surprise me if he could sling the football a little bit too. But, I think they expect, just the way Coach Roth is talking, to have Stone back for the playoffs. But, getting giving teams another look late in the season is never a bad thing. They should probably roll Jersey Shore pretty easily, the way things have been going. And, if there's any concerns right now, I think the Tigers have given up 20 points each of the last 2 weeks. Most of that last week against South was after the game was already decided. But, if there's something to work on maybe a little bit is a little bit of defensive work for a defense that was playing lights out for from week 2 to about week 5.
And maybe slow starts. South scored the first touchdown. Central scored the first touchdown 2 weeks ago. I mean, I know from the results it doesn't matter, but I don't think if you're Coach Roth, you like starting the last 2 games behind early.
It might matter at some point this season. It doesn't matter now, but it could matter at some point this season, and that's probably the big thing. And it looks like they have like a 200-point lead in the power rankings on Wellsboro, but Wellsboro is still undefeated, and that's if they want to be the number 1 seed and not have to travel late in the season. It looks like last year they're going to have to win out.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk. You mentioned Wellsboro fighting with Southern for the number 1 seed. Wellsboro undefeated has had last 2 weeks have struggled a little bit with Athens was one of them. The other one's escaping. Hughesville is wow.
They trailed both times at halftime and then rallied to come back and win at 6-0. And
Milton's headed there Friday.
Yeah, Milton's headed there Friday. I think the Hughesville game was only 7-0 at the half. They were down, but in that game against Athens, they were down 21-0 at halftime and rallied to win. Not the same Wellsboro team as the last couple of years. A lot of those kids have graduated. I think Quinn Henry, the quarterback who ran for 1,000 yards and threw for 1,000 yards last year, is actually playing the football they play at Mansfield. The weight limit football.
Okay.
I can't think of what it's called right now for Mansfield, but for Wellsboro, they need to get off to a fast start because obviously Milton can score some points. Mm-hmm. Fortunately for the Black Panthers, they haven't been scoring some points lately, but they have that capability. They've had that capability earlier this season. They just haven't been able to get any consistency going, and Montoursville was so far ahead last week, I think, early that it kind of got away from the Black Panthers. Obviously Wellsboro would like to get off to better starts than they have the last couple weeks. They're led by Adrian Hauser, who has 800 yards on the ground and 8 touchdowns. And one of my favorite names, Silas Wagaman, has a team-high 5 touchdown catches for the Hornets. Wellsboro probably gets this one, but I think it's pretty obvious they can't overlook the Black Panthers, who are kind of in a dogfight for that 8th seed with Warrior Run, Mifflinburg, and Milton. And with Loyalsock now at 2-4, Loyalsock's kind of in danger if they stay struggle of kind of dropping out if they can't get healthy. So, any win is, I think if Milton can pull off a pretty big upset here, they could really do real good for their playoff race hopes.
Sure. Well, we're about halfway through our game, so we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, Sun Orthopedics at Evangelical.
Whether it's time to live it up on the field or in the backyard, there's always time to play. The sports medicine team at Sun Orthopedics of Evangelical understands how important movement is to you and your family's life. With 4 convenient locations, the experts at Sun Orthopedics explore every treatment option available, from simple braces to advanced surgical techniques. They support you through the entire healing process, making sure you're back to being a warrior every weekend. Sun Orthopedics of Evangelical. Hit refresh and get moving again.
To start our second half, I want to talk about one of our hotter teams who started off the season poorly, but Warrior Run coming off two straight wins. Looked pretty good the last 2 weeks. 22-0 over Hughesville last week, 14-12 over Mifflinburg 2 weeks ago. They're headed to Bloomsburg, who, like we talked about earlier, got beat up pretty badly by Lewisburg last week.
Yeah, and Bloomsburg was playing pretty well up until that Lewisburg game. Had won a couple in a row after getting crushed by Southern the first game of the season again. No shame in that, obviously. No. But yeah, Warrior Run has won 2 games in a row. Have played really well on defense. I'm gonna do my own cheap plug for once this week. Gonna head up in a couple hours actually to talk to Jackson Welliver, the Warrior Run linebacker, who has 69 tackles so far this year. It's going to be, it's kind of interesting. I remember when his dad was the head coach at Warrior Run, Tim. I think Tim's the principal now. And I wonder if it was just a little bit of, getting comfortable with a new coach. They have, it was the first 2 weeks of the season. Yeah, I think it was before the Milton game, the second week of the season. I talked to Coach Long, and they were just, they hadn't started well until that Danville game, where they gave Danville some problems. And since then, they've played real well. Remington Quarterman, the quarterback, had struggled. I don't want to say struggled, but had threw some interceptions at the beginning of the season, and they've begun to take care of the ball a little bit. Riley Dahlberg has gotten involved in the passing game, and then another big thing for him is Denver Beachel seems to have taken over the role at tailback, had 154 yards and a touchdown last week, and they've really seemed to want to get the ball in his hands a little bit more the last couple weeks, and that's really helped. And I think this is, kind of a testing game for Warrior Run. I think it was you and I were talking. I think maybe it was somebody else in the office earlier, but I expect Bloomsburg to win this game, but if Warrior Run can play well, get some turnovers, and stay in this one, I think they have a chance to survive Bloomsburg. And this is a game that kind of Warrior Run has struggled. There's been a couple times over the past 4 or 5 years that Warrior Run's played well, run into a decent Bloomsburg team, and gotten kind of run out of the stadium. I don't think that happens this time. I think Bloomsburg gets this one, but I think this is a big game for Warrior Run, and kind of seeing where they're at so far in the first year under Chris Long.
Definitely. And right now Warrior Run has the last playoff spot, so a win here would be huge to trying to keep that.
Yeah, and I'm assuming we're going Loyal-Sock Mifflinburg next. That's another big game in the bottom half of that bracket, with Mifflinburg at 9 and Loyal-Sock at 7, and not a good matchup last week for the Wildcats with Mount Carmel, especially without quarterback Gary DeGroat Jr. Kind of forced to do some things that they probably haven't done yet this season with a backup, and then Mount Carmel basically worked on his passing game last week. Tommy Riesinger I think it was 216 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. Showing kind of the weapons they have in the passing game, between John Ayers and Shane Widener on the ground. People forget about Jack Chapman at tight end, and he has 327 yards receiving right now. And, that's a big weapon in the middle of the field that's going to help them in the playoffs, kind of when teams get a little better and they're facing some real good teams. It's hard to get a read in this Loyal-Sock team. They were able to move the ball early on Selinsgrove, and the Kavanaugh kid, Cole Kavanaugh, the new quarterback, seemed to throw the ball well, other than the 90-yard interception return by Josh Nyland. So Loyal-Sock seems to be, okay without Watkins. It's just a matter of getting comfortable and kind of overcoming these injuries. I think this game is close. Going to go with the Lancers here, but it wouldn't surprise me if Mifflinburg wins, because this Mifflinburg team 1 week is playing well and 1 week playing not so well, and this is a good week for them. So we'll see what they can do, and getting a win there. If both them and Warrior Run can get a win, that probably knocks Loyal-Sock out and puts both those teams in. So that'd be a fun Class AAA playoffs if we can get most of the bottom half and the top half of the bracket together.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have to travel very far.
No, home games are good. Our last hack game is Hughesville, who we've talked about, shut out by Warrior Run last week, and they're headed to Mount Carmel, who we just talked about. Looked real good against Mifflinburg last week. Started getting the passing game going. Red Tornadoes roll.
Yeah, I think so. And Montoursville's really struggling to do anything offensively. Hughesville. Getting their, switch back to the wing tee, banged up at quarterback, the sophomore Corson kid that started the first game, didn't play last week. Their running back, Jace Wright, threw the most passes, so it looks like they moved him to quarterback. But they didn't complete one last week, and you don't want to go into the Silver Bowl with a one-dimensional offense, and especially when that one dimension is running the ball the way Mount Carmel stops the run. I think this is another game where Mount Carmel kind of picks what it wants to do, what it wants to work on. I think this is the section of the schedule they're kind of getting ready for that last game with Shamokin, a big coal bucket game, and getting ready for the playoffs these next couple weeks of the season.
I wish Mount Carmel could play Danville. That's just my, I would like to see that game. don't play. They're in different classes, but in my head, I think that'd be a fun game to watch.
I was going to say, what more do you want at the end of Port Danville's schedule?
I want Mount Carmel.
Toss a Mount Carmel in there, too?
Yeah, week 10 and a half.
There you go. Midweek game.
Yeah, right before the playoffs start. Midwest, home last week against Penns Valley. Had a big lead. Penns Valley came back and tied it. Penns Valley scored in their portion of overtime, missed the extra point. Midwest scored and got their extra point for a 1-point home overtime win. They welcome in Nativity, who the only time they played one of our teams I think was week 1.
Millersburg, yeah.
48-27 Millers. They beat Millersburg week 1. I think this could be a fun game Friday night too.
Yeah, it's going to come down to if Midwest can stop the run or not. Nativity wants to run the ball. They had 2 1,000-yard rushers last year. Both guys on pace this year. Can't think of the running back's name. It's hard to forget the quarterback's name. It's Sincere Walker. It's another one of my favorite names. And Nativity is 5-2. They had a weird midweek game.
Wow.
Back in September where they had to go to Bucktail and played Bucktail on a Wednesday and then played on a Friday night again. Won both games actually.
With 1 day in between.
Yeah, with 1 day in between. 1 day in between. 5-2. Lost in overtime to Mahanoy area and lost to Minersville. Minersville actually just lost to Marion. I always holler at you for the transitive property of sports, but and Minersville just lost to Marion for Marion's first win of the season. So it's I guess my point is it's a winnable game. Be interesting to see what Midwest does. At running back with Trey Laver out, and it sounds like Cameron Klein got hurt after scoring 2 touchdowns last week against Penns Valley.
A lot of Mark Piccioni.
Yeah, I was going to say that puts a lot of weight in the shoulders of the quarterback to run the ball and to throw the ball. It's probably going to come down again. It's going to come down to that defensive line and whether or not they could stop Nativity's running game. I think they win this one. They got to be pretty excited to be 4-2 heading into the last couple weeks of the season. Probably a tough game with Athens. Probably a winnable game with Vincentian Academy. Who, if that game is played, I think 2 weeks ago, Vincentian had to cancel their game for lack of players. Not a very big program. And
that would stink for Midwest. They only have 9 to start with.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that final road game goes, too, with Tunkhannock. It's looking every bit of 7-2, have a shot at 7-2, and that might get them a home game. And I think, there'd be a lot of people in the west end of Snyder County pretty happy with that.
Yeah. Slide over to the Tri-Valley League where Lion Mountain's coming off a tough, low-scoring loss to Williams Valley, who's one of the premier programs out that way. And they're hosting Newport, who got their first win on Monday at Millersburg.
Yeah, and this is always an interesting game because, of course, Newport coach Todd Rothermel used to be the Lion Mountain head coach probably 10, 12 years ago.
What was that long ago?
It was that long ago. Hey, man. He seems like a new Lion Mountain coach to me, and it's 10, 12 years ago. But anyway, down at Newport now, saw them on Monday night against Millersburg. Have a real big, tough running back in Ethan Road, who's gonna get his yardage probably. Kind of one-dimensional. Newport's quarterbacks are young. They struggle. I don't want to say struggle to throw the ball against Millersburg, but I think Lion Mountain probably has enough to stop them from do a good job pass defense wise. It's going to come down to stopping the run, and if Lion Mountain can take care of the ball, because it's honestly where the Eagles have really struggled this year is taking care of the ball and scoring points offensively. Colby Scott has run the ball well the last 2 games. They just didn't get an offensive touchdown last week. The only touchdown came on Jacob Priest's fumble recovery in the end zone. Newport's good enough to beat this Lion Mountain team if Lion Mountain looks at this record and sees that they're only 1-5. But as Coach Rothermel said, I think those 5 losses have come to teams with Newport's 5 losses have come to teams with 4 total losses combined.
Wow!
So it's not like they're getting whipped up on by some bad teams. But, I think Lion Mountain gets this one, but they have to be aware that this Buffalo team is probably a little better than their 1-5 record indicates.
And this is a important game for Lion Mountain as far as playoff positioning goes. They were the 5 seed last week before the loss, and now they dropped to 7, I think?
Yeah, they dropped to 7, still have a good 40-point lead on Towanda, who's 2-4.
Okay.
Going to have to get probably have to get a couple wins yet to kind of wrap up that playoff seed. But, you know, the teams behind Lime Mountain and Towanda are Wyalusing's 1-5 and Hughesville's 0-6. So, you know,
So it's more about seeding than getting.
Yeah, it's probably more about seeding because obviously in AA you want no part of the 1 seed.
Nope.
You know, and I think if you're Lime Mountain, you're perfectly happy sitting in that 7 seed, even if, you know, because you went to Wellsboro last year and beat them on their home field when they were the 2 seed and you were the 7 seed last year. So
Sure.
I think you're happy as long as I think they want to avoid Southern Columbia and they want to avoid Mount Carmel because Mount Carmel ran them out of the Silver Bowl in the semifinals last year.
Yes. Our last game of the week, Millersburg headed to Tri-Valley. Millersburg's had a few rough weeks. 27 rough weeks, but
yeah.
they really showed some flashes earlier in the season. That Upper Dauphin game, that Nativity game week 1, that seemed like they were on the cusp, and the past couple weeks have dampened my enthusiasm a little.
You know, it's one of those things that when something positive happened, on Monday night, something negative immediately followed. Duke Bolton after Newport took a 7-0 lead, returned the kickoff to the Newport 12, 87 yards.
Wow.
But 4th and 4 from the 8, false start, incomplete pass. Late in the game, drove inside the 5, and Caden Feaster, the quarterback, took a hit on a run, put Aiden Harmon in, took the snap, tried to run, got stripped, fumble. You know, and it's just one of those things that, you know, when you're in the midst of a losing streak like this, it just magnifies those mistakes, and when they happen, it seems to always happen in the most inopportune times. And, you know, obviously they're going out to Tri-Valley. Millersburg, you know, Tri-Valley probably wins this one, but, you know, the Bulldogs are probably not as good as they have been the last couple years. Mm-hmm. You know, I thought Millersburg maybe might score some points Monday night, and if they can eliminate some of those mistakes, you know, we've seen they can score some points. So, you know, I think Tri-Valley wins this one, but, you know, hopefully Millersburg can get some of these things ironed out. And, you know, 1+ for them, they seem to be fairly healthy, look like they're going to complete the season now. It's just a matter of, you know, trying to get that first win.
Yeah, one of the things Coach Wright has talked about early in the season and last season was just, you know, winning little battles to build up to that win. And, you know, that's just what I hope for them for Friday night. They've done that some through the season, but maybe consistently do that and get a late win this season would be real nice for those kids in that program.
I mean, you see flashes offensively sometimes from them, but, you know, again, just mistakes. Mistakes kill them, and they really, you know, it's unfortunate. They cannot stop the running game, you know, until they figure out a way to hold teams. And, you know, and even then, they got the 3rd down a couple times against Newport. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Newport was able to convert. I think I had them 3 for 3 in the first half on 3rd down. So even when they're getting a 3rd down, they're struggling to get that key stop to kind of force a punt and to stay into these games.
All right, those are our games for this week. Make sure you pick up Friday's daily item for game night with our cover story on Jackson Welliver and previews of all the games. Friday night, follow along at dailyitem.com with our live blog and our scoreboard, which I try to update anytime anyone scores in any of the games we're covering. So, you know, keep looking at that. Are
you as good as Red Zone?
I'm better.
Oh, all right.
Because Red Zone sometimes, we just missed a touchdown. Nope, there's a touchdown. I update it. Make sure to grab Saturday's paper with all the results, and then Monday's paper with our notebook with interesting tidbits from Friday night's games. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Whether it's time to live it up on the field or in the backyard, there's always time to play. The sports medicine team at Sun Orthopedics of Evangelical understands how important movement is to you and your family's life. With 4 convenient locations, the experts at Sun Orthopedics explore every treatment option available, from simple braces to advanced surgical techniques. They support you through the entire healing process, making sure you're back to being a warrior every weekend. Sun Orthopedics of Evangelical. Hit refresh and get moving again.